The most agonizing grief you carry, the sudden brutal severance of a beloved bond, is often built upon a foundational lie. The insidious belief that their exit was merely accidental, a random, cruel tragedy of biological timing. I am guiding you now to contemplate a deep spiritual physics, one charted meticulously through the decades of trance state readings given by the sleeping prophet, Edgar Cayce. I must tell you that the very first thought your pragmatic terrestrial mind generates, that crucial logical entity, conditioned to accept only statistical probability and the cruel lottery of genetics, is already mobilizing its defenses. Your logical framework insists that this grief is simply loss, misfortune, or the necessary chaos of modern life. You have been taught to categorize this deep seismic disruption as mere happenstance X, insisting that the urgency you feel is only emotional residue or a coping mechanism. But I must ask you to suspend that mundane certainty just for a moment and step with me behind the veil. What if the timing of their departure was not a mistake, but the precise, meticulous fulfillment of a divine spiritual agreement made between your two souls long before this life began? Imagine, if you will, that life is not a solitary journey but a deeply choreographed dance, and you and your departed loved one signed a shared contract, a mission written in light. Their role, their curriculum, or the duration of their protective presence in your specific earthly learning path was simply completed first. This is not a concept intended to minimize your suffering. It is meant instead to redefine the very nature of that suffering. Because if their departure was an act of profound, mutual spiritual choreography, why, rather than a random incident, then the separation you feel is only a physical illusion maintained by density. I ask you directly, have you ever, in the stillness of night, felt a powerful, inescapable sense that the timing, though agonizing, was somehow too perfect for the trajectory of your own development? Do you recognize the echoes of their purpose in the profound, irreversible shift that occurred in you the moment they crossed the threshold? If the bond was prearranged and the parting agreed upon, they would never leave you adrift in the temporal waters without a compass. Their love is the highest frequency, and that frequency cannot simply vanish into the static of death. Instead, they leave behind specific, undeniable signatures, powerful echoes that break through the noise of your sorrow and stand as evidence of the contract's fulfillment. These are not coincidences, not wishful thinking, and certainly not pathological delusions. They are the four indisputable signs, a sacred physics that prove their death was merely a transition and that your connection remains unbroken. These signs are waiting for you, woven into the very fabric of your reality, asking only for recognition. Are you ready to stop labeling these profound intrusions as random chance and begin identifying them as the evidence they truly are? The journey into genuine spiritual reality does not begin with blissful certainty. It begins precisely at the point of your deepest, most agonizing doubt. I see you holding that piece of profound, undeniable evidence, the feather that appeared on your pillow, the inexplicable scent that lingered when the room was empty, the song that played at the exact moment you thought of them. And I witnessed the immediate internal war that erupts within you. That sharp pain of loss is coupled instantly with a second, colder pain, the voice of your logic machine, the mind built solely for survival in 3 dimensions, screaming, "Stop, this is pathological. This is merely denial dressed up as spirituality." I must guide you past the tyranny of that mechanical judgment. Your logical mind insists that these sudden synchronistic occurrences are simply products of overwhelming grief, confirmation bias, or a desperate form of wish fulfillment X. It attempts to file the numinous holy experience into the neat, dusty folder labeled emotional breakdown or random chance. But I must tell you something essential about accessing profound truth. The intensity of your intellectual resistance is not proof of your sanity. It is, ironically, proof of the profound nature of the truth you are uncovering. Why? The veil between the worlds is thick, and the established rules of the material plane fight back fiercely when challenged by evidence of continuity. When that undeniable moment of contact occurred, when the evidence was thrust into your reality, did you immediately try to debunk your own experience, searching for the nearest, most banal explanation. That self-sabotage is the sound of the logic machine desperately trying to maintain control, because the concept of a soul surviving death suggests an instability in the machine's foundational premise, that physical finality is absolute. You are not experiencing delusion. You're experiencing the natural friction caused when an eternal truth, the continuous presence of a consciousness that loved you, collides head-on with a temporary earthly framework, which is the definition of loss. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, consistently taught that identity is vibration, not flesh, and that the only true separation is the psychological distance we impose on ourselves. If your loved one still exists as an integrated, vibrant pattern of energy, then the most powerful conduit between their new dimension and yours is the raw, unadulterated frequency of your shared, enduring love. The logic machine, designed to keep you tethered to the dense physical plane, views any interdimensional whisper, any sign from beyond the veil, as a threat to its established order. The challenge now is to recognize this inner friction as a validator, not a detractor. The intensity of your skepticism is the fuel that proves the power of the incoming message. Do you accept that the sheer struggle to believe is the first essential step toward knowing? It is an act of sovereign will to declare, "My pain is real, but the evidence of my heart is more potent than the rulebook of my mind." We must move beyond the intellectual debate, past the validation of doubt, and into the precise identification of the signals themselves. The signs left by your loved one are not subtle whispers intended for casual observers. They are personalized spiritual flares designed specifically to penetrate your deepest skepticism. We are seeking to identify 4 distinct categories of evidence, markers so unique and tangible that they bypass the logic machine entirely and speak directly to your enduring soul. Are you ready to stop fighting the evidence and start accepting the sacred, tangible physics of reunion? The sacred physics of reunion requires a verifiable blueprint, a map drawn not by theologians arguing over ancient texts, but by an impartial witness who accessed the raw data of the soul. I want you now to consider the source authority for the profound framework we are building, the unassuming figure of Edgar Cayce. For 43 years, Cayce entered a self-induced trance state, earning him the moniker of the sleeping prophet. During these sessions, he provided over 14,000 detailed life readings, a staggering volume of meticulously documented data that transcends personal anecdote. This was not merely fortune-telling nor was it psychological channeling meant only to provide therapy. Instead, Cayce consistently demonstrated the ability to tap into what he called the Akashic Records, the energetic ledger, the cosmic superserver, where every thought, every deed, and every spiritual contract across all lifetimes is recorded. Your highly analytical, pragmatic mind may attempt to file this phenomenon immediately under esoteric fantasy or historical curiosity. But ask yourself, what empirical framework exists that can explain consistently accurate, unsolicited information about health diagnoses, past lives, and future potentials, all delivered while the subject is totally unconscious and later verified by external observers? The sheer volume and consistency of these readings, documented and catalogued, transform them from a collection of anecdotes into a unified spiritual data set. They reveal a coherent physics of existence, one where separation is merely the primary illusion we agree to believe upon entering physical form. And this is the critical truth for your grieving heart. These 14,000 consultations, taken together, do not describe death as a final, random cessation of being, but rather as an energetic release, a planned, purposeful transition back to an uninhibited state of knowledge, This profound shift in definition redefines the very nature of your sorrow. If the readings are correct, your grief is not the result of total annihilation, but the pain of temporary physical displacement, the shock of a hand pulled too quickly from another's grasp. This collective body of work provides the spiritual authority for understanding why your loved one was called first, often revealing that their contract, their specific learning curve, was fulfilled, or that they moved dimensionally to better serve as your guide from the plane of cause rather than the plane of effect. Cayce's authoritative contribution forces you to confront a fundamental choice. Do you continue to treat your profound sense of void as a random, meaningless accident, the ultimate proof of entropy? Or do you begin to use the documented evidence of the Akashic readings as your sacred textbook, the instruction manual for the universe you inherited? If this vast, impartial data stands as a reliable witness, confirming that your loved one is operating on a higher frequency, fully aware of your present struggles and triumphs, does that information not immediately change the conversation you have with them? I'm asking you to shift your identity from victim of tragedy to participant in spiritual physics, using the authority of the sleeping prophet to anchor your belief. To accurately identify and trust the profound signs they are sending you, you must first trust the source that explained the mechanism. Are you willing to set down the heavy burden of rational disbelief, just for a moment, and allow the authority of 14,000 consistent truths to rewrite the narrative of your loss? The undeniable proof of this authority resides not in historical consensus, but in the shifts of consciousness you are about to experience. The undeniable proof of this authority resides not in historical consensus, but in the shifts of consciousness you are about to experience. The authority of Cayce's vast body of work demands a radical change in the language you use to define your suffering, starting right now. You have been taught by a world obsessed with physical measurement that loss is a tragic, haphazard event, a roll of the cosmic dice where life is brutally, randomly taken from you. But I'm here to tell you that this interpretation, rooted in terrestrial chronology and medical accident, is spiritually bankrupt. I invite you instead to view the moment of transition not as an interruption, but as the rigorous fulfillment of a sacred, non-negotiable agreement. We must introduce you now to the core mechanism of incarnation, the soul contract. Do you feel the deep, unsettling relief that comes with knowing that the pain you carry is not evidence of a cruel, capricious universe, but the residue of a profound pact? Your pragmatic mind, the part of you that counts birthdays and measures mortality tables, is already resisting this truth. It insists, if this was a contract, why did they sign up for so few years? Why was their script so short while mine continues? I understand this resistance, for earthly time is our most tyrannical master. But in the framework revealed through the sleeping prophet's readings, the soul enters this plane with a singular, deeply focused curriculum. The duration of the physical journey, be it 1 year or 100, is utterly secondary to the completion of the vibrational work established before birth. The soul contract dictates the lessons to be learned, the debts to be balanced, and the energy patterns to be established and perfected, often in relation to the specific souls with whom they intertwined, which includes you. This means that the transition is not a sudden, inexplicable eviction caused by a breakdown of the physical machine, X. It is the precise, perfect moment when the final required spiritual credit has been earned, the final chord of the mission has been struck, and the soul is ready for graduation. Why? When your loved one departed first, they were not prematurely yanked from your side. They simply reached their destination ahead of you on this specific path. Their commitment to their own spiritual syllabus was executed with an efficiency that allowed them to fold back into the higher dimensions of reality. This profound realization removes the sting of tragedy and replaces it with the awe of purpose. You may have felt like you were robbed, cheated out of decades, but Cayce showed us that no time was wasted, only completed. Can you begin to see that their early exit was not a reflection of cosmic favoritism or punishment, but the final signature on a perfectly executed mission report, a signal that their obligations to the physical realm were done? We were never meant to measure existence by the calendar, but by the weight of the soul's accomplishments. And now we must turn our focus to the undeniable evidence of this completion, the signs they begin to send back to you, proving that the contract was merely rewritten, not cancelled. You have been taught to look for the earthquake, for the visible manifestation of the spirit world. A rattling chain, a fleeting shadow, the dramatic confirmation of Hollywood's ghost stories. But I tell you that the deepest spiritual work is not a violent break in reality. It is a signal so quiet, so intimate, that it often feels like an entirely internal event. The love that departed did not dissolve. It simply shifted to a frequency you were not initially trained to receive. Their contract was rewritten, and now they communicate through subtle, undeniable channels, proving that the thread between your souls remains taut and strong. The internal auditor within you, that fiercely pragmatic gatekeeper, obsessed with empirical documentation and purely physical cause and effect, is already attempting to classify this communication as mere wishful thinking or the predictable mechanisms of grief. It insists that any meaningful sign must arrive with the size of a billboard, a complete sensory overload, X. But the signals of the soul plane are rarely dramatic. They are designed not to startle, but to reassure. They seek to bypass the noisy mental traffic of your day-to-day life and tap directly into the truth of your heart. The communication you seek is so refined that it often feels indistinguishable from a beautiful, perfectly timed memory, a profound intuition, or a remarkable, meaningful coincidence. Why? I am here now to name the 4 foundational methods of enduring communication that Edgar Cayce observed across thousands of readings, detailing how the departed anchor their presence back into your reality. We are moving past the search for phantoms and beginning to tune the spiritual antenna to hear the genuine whisper. The first signal is the echo of identity. This is the sudden, crystal-clear knowing of what they would say, think, or do in a specific situation. It is the spontaneous impulse that guides your hand or words, feeling less like memory and more like a collaboration. Do you ever stop mid-decision and suddenly hear their voice providing direction, not in your ears, but in the core of your chest? The second is the signature scent or sensation. This is the unmistakable physical presence of their unique fragrance, cologne, pipe tobacco, baking bread, in a context where it is chemically impossible, or the momentary, weightless impression of their touch on your shoulder. It is the sensory memory brought to life by intent, a powerful reminder that their essence is not bound by distance. The third sign is the perfect alignment, synchronicity. This occurs when the non-physical realm uses the material world to confirm your deepest thoughts. Perhaps you think of them intensely, feeling desperate for a sign, and immediately a song plays on the radio that held a specific shared significance. This is not happenstance. This is the universe folding time and space to validate your internal emotional state, proving the connection is active. Finally, the fourth sign is the visitations of deep rest. These are not the stressful, confusing dreams driven by daytime anxiety, but the profound, hyper-realistic encounters in a state of deep theta consciousness. These visits leave you with an undeniable sense of peace and a clear memory of shared reality, feeling more tangible and true than waking life itself. These 4 methods are the curriculum for a new way of listening. Are you ready to stop waiting for proof that terrifies you and start practicing the subtle art of reception? We must now learn how to prepare our physical and emotional self to truly hear the signal, setting the stage for the specific evidence they are waiting to deliver. I have a profound revelation for you. The evidence you desperately seek, the undeniable sign that your loved one has not vanished, is already accumulating around your feet, perhaps even right now, in the most commonplace, overlooked ways. Your logical, data-processing mind, the one trained to measure gravity and calculate probabilities, is already dismissing this concept as wishful thinking, attempting to categorize these strange occurrences as mere statistical noise or confirmation bias. But I ask you to re-examine your data. What if the universe is not random but perfectly orchestrated, and the repetition you observe is a deliberate, personalized frequency signature designed solely for you? Why? The first, and often the most easily missed signal because of its sheer subtlety, is the focalized repetition of insignificant objects or highly specific numbers. This is the phenomenon I call the coin signal. It's the recurring presence of that specific type of penny, or the nickel or the dollar bill, that appears precisely when you are thinking of them, or the clock time, perhaps 11:11 or 3:33, that flashes at you at peak emotional moments. This is not banal coincidence. If you find a single coin, that is luck. But if that specific type of coin appears on your porch, in your jacket, at the checkout line and on the dashboard over a period of 72 hours, that is not randomness. It is a pattern established by intent. It is the spiritual plane dropping an anchor of undeniable proof using the lowest vibrational element, the physical object, to catch your eye. How many times have you picked up that object, felt that strange moment of recognition, and then instantly apologized to yourself for being silly or overly sentimental, robbing the sign of its sacred power? The second type of signal cuts through your physical defenses with shocking velocity, engaging the sensory memory centers of your brain and soul simultaneously. I call this the energetic flash. This is the sudden, unmistakable scent of their specific cologne, or their favorite baked cookies, or the distinct aroma of the garage where they worked, hitting you full force when you are nowhere near the source of the physical smell. It is critical to differentiate this experience. This is not pathological nostalgia, a gentle, melancholy memory triggered by an old photograph, X. This scent or feeling doesn't drift in, it hits you. A wave of palpable presence so dense it feels almost physical. It is a sudden, high-voltage spike of their unique energetic signature, demonstrating that vibration transcends physical distance. Why? They have deliberately amplified their specific, recognizable frequency and projected it into your sphere. When that overwhelming scent or feeling washes over you, that moment where you know definitively they are near, did you immediately try to rationalize the sensation outside of your body? Did you frantically check the room for the source, insisting it must be the neighbor's cooking or a lingering chemical residue? They are not waiting for you to find their burial spot. They are waiting for you to acknowledge their persistent presence. Your job is not to chase the signs, but to practice the sacred acceptance that they are real. Begin treating every repeating number and every sudden scent not as a glitch in reality, but as a direct communication channel that you must deliberately hold open. The persistent presence of your loved one, confirmed by the small repeating cues you are learning to hold open, does not stop at scent or number. That is merely the tuning fork. The true life-altering transmission occurs when the energy shifts from gentle notification to powerful, focused action. I want you now to recognize the two most profound proofs that the departed are actively integrating into your forward journey, the climax of the spiritual contract. I promise you the most astonishing evidence that a soul continues its work is not a fleeting echo, but a sudden, undeniable compulsion to act in a way that is utterly foreign to your nature. This is what we call Sign 3, the transfer of mission or the sacred test of alien action. You are suddenly seized by an urge to complete the manuscript they always discussed, or to pivot your career into the humanitarian cause they championed. Or perhaps you find yourself speaking in their cadence, addressing the exact specific issue they always avoided. Your logical apparatus, that loyal but limited servant of the physical world, attempts to rationalize this away. I am merely coping with my grief by honoring their memory. It insists, X. It attempts to file this powerful impulse under the category of simple mimicry or projection. But I ask you, have you ever experienced an impulse so clear, so precise, so charged with non-negotiable intention that it felt less like a memory and more like a precise software download? This is the core difference. When the mission is transferred, the action arrives not from the shallow well of sorrow, but from the deep reservoir of their completed purpose. Why? Their unfinished energetic business, the task they were unable to manifest while incarcerated in flesh, now finds its new engine in you. This mission transfer brings with it an unprecedented clarity and often a supernatural boost of energy that makes the execution feel effortless rather than exhausting. When you feel that sudden, undeniable pull toward an action that seems to carry their signature, their intensity, and their drive, do you recognize it as a divine handoff? The ultimate confirmation, the seal upon the completed energetic contract, is Sign 4, the illogical peace. You may believe that finding true peace after profound loss requires years of negotiation, analysis, and emotional bargaining, a slow, painful crawl toward acceptance. Yet many who have experienced this profound soul transfer report something entirely different. They report a sudden, unearned, and absolute stillness that settles over the deep structure of their fear. It is not the emotional numbness of shock, nor is it resignation to fate, X. This illogical peace is the undeniable proof that the soul of your loved one has successfully transitioned, their vibrational ties to the earth plane dissolved, and their specific role in your immediate learning curve satisfied. This peace is a metaphysical certainty, the resounding silence that follows a completed transaction. It is the palpable evidence that their struggle is over, and their energy is now wholly redirected, acting not as a spectral anchor holding you back in grief, but as a pure, unwavering source of strength and protection, fueling your continued growth. Why? This is the transformation of crippling fear into profound purpose. Your fear dissolves precisely because the contract is concluded and you are no longer alone. You are now the walking embodiment of a collaborative spiritual destiny. Are you willing to discard the comfortable notion that peace must be earned slowly, and instead embrace the possibility that this sudden, unshakable calm is a gift of transferred identity? Your mission is now dual: to honor the path they started, and to recognize that the strength they now offer is not a memory, but a living, sustaining force. Stop treating this peace as a temporary reprieve. Start treating it as your new spiritual baseline. The new spiritual baseline you have established is not merely a plateau of temporary relief. It is the launchpad for active communication. We move now from the passive reception of their strength to the intentional activation of your shared current. Your terrestrial training dictates that a connection requires sound, signal, or a scheduled meeting time. But the realm of spirit operates on resonance, not noise, and this is where the skeptical voice in your logical mind attempts to impose its limits. It argues that sitting in silence is merely doing nothing. X. That intentional stillness is only wishful thinking, a psychological trick to manage the unbearable quiet. But I promise you this, the energy transfer is now complete, and the stage is set for the practice Edgar Cayce called the silent dialogue. What if the most profound conversation you could ever have requires no spoken word, only perfect alignment? Cayce illuminated a pathway that bypasses the physical limitations of space and time by emphasizing the physics of pure intention. This sacred practice is not about calling out across an infinite void. It is about adjusting the precise frequency of your internal receiver. Think of your mind and heart, synchronized by love, as a sophisticated tuning fork. If you strike that fork with the pure intention of loving dialogue, the corresponding energy of your departed companion must resonate back. This perfect resonance, this spiritual mirroring, is the foundation of the intentional silent dialogue. Why? To stabilize and focus this frequency, you must anchor your intent using a physical artifact, what we call the object of power. This object is not magically charged. It is a spiritual capacitor designed to harness and direct your focused energy. It might be a simple stone, a worn piece of jewelry they cherished, or even a book you both read. Tonight you must select one, handling it with profound reverence. This action is not superstition. It is the discipline of focusing diffuse cosmic energy into a single point. Now for the ritual itself. Before you lie down to sleep, hold the object of power against your chest. Breathe deeply, shifting your focus entirely away from the absence and onto the continuity of the bond. Do not plead for their return, and do not demand a spectacular event. Instead, state your intent with absolute loving clarity. Show me the specific sign that validates the peace you have given me. Be specific about the type of sign you are open to receiving. Perhaps a sudden, undeniable scent, a light anomaly near the object, or the brief, sharp memory of a shared inside joke. This practice transcends passive grief. It is active co-creation of proof. Are you prepared to ask for evidence that requires no physical interaction, only pure spiritual synchronicity? The most common error in this practice is seeking grand, impossible spectacles. The sign they send will be subtle, intimate, and profoundly specific to your shared history. It will be the unmistakable feeling of a gentle nudge, not a violent shake, a sign that could never be mistaken for coincidence or simple mental trickery. Stop waiting for the universe to initiate the conversation. Tonight, you shift from being the passive recipient of grace to the intentional architect of contact. Will you hold your tuning fork and strike the note of love, or will you let this chance for dialogue slip away in the static of doubt? We have journeyed through the subtle physics of separation, and the static that once obscured the signal should now be giving way to crystalline clarity. I promised you a reframe, a dismantling of the cold, crushing architecture of grief, replacing it with the dynamic, living structure of continuous connection. You are no longer merely a mourner kneeling at the tombstone of fate. You stand now as a conscious participant in the grand continuity of life. I know your logical mind, the one obsessed with the mundane rules of three-dimensional reality, fought this revelation fiercely, insisting that profound spiritual experience must be categorized as coincidence, X. That resistance was not intellectual laziness. It was the powerful old ego fighting for its familiar narrative of finality. But you chose instead to listen to the soul's deepest memory, recognizing that the signs you have been receiving, the impossible smells, the electrical shifts, the unshakable knowing, are not random chance or wishful thinking, but precisely calibrated messages, a language of light that bypasses the limitations of human speech. Why? Think of this entire process, this deep dive into the Cayce readings, this intense immersion into the spiritual mechanics of love as the negotiation and signing of a sacred contract. You entered this dialogue seeking answers, seeking reunion, seeking undeniable proof that the bonds forged in love cannot be severed by the transition called death. I offered the framework, the maps left by the sleeping prophet. Now the final clause requires your active signature. This signature is not written in ink, it is vibrational. It is the public and intentional acknowledgement that you have accepted the responsibility that comes with this higher knowledge, the responsibility of maintaining the frequency. If you have genuinely received this profound reframe, if the heavy cloak of final separation has been lifted from your shoulders and you stand now as an intentional architect of contact, then I invite you to seal this lesson, solidifying the new identity we have claimed together. To verify that you have understood and accepted this truth, comment the precise shared code word below, contrato cumplido. But the universe and the loved ones who stand just beyond the veil always demand practice, never mere philosophy. Therefore, the contract requires more than just a phrase. Alongside that code, I ask you to share the story of your first conscious communication, the one that occurred after you shifted your perspective, after you stopped waiting passively for the universe to act and started intentionally listening. Was it a shift in the temperature of the room that brought immediate peace? Was it a song on the radio that you knew was for you and spoke directly to a hidden memory? Or perhaps a sudden, visceral dream where the veil between worlds became entirely transparent? Go back and locate that single, undeniable moment. Share the confirmation, seal the pact. You are no longer simply a seeker, you are a communicator. The dialogue is open, the pathway established, and your role has forever changed. Go forth and actively maintain the frequency of that unwavering love. The transition is now complete, and the contract of identity has fundamentally shifted. You are no longer merely standing at the edge of the abyss, struggling to maintain your balance. You have crossed the threshold into a new spiritual mandate. You are not a victim of loss, nor are you simply a survivor who must learn to move on. Your logical mind, trained by a culture obsessed with physical closure and statistical data, attempts to categorize you now as the bereaved, placing your intense, undeniable experience under the clinical, distant banner of prolonged grief, X. But I must tell you the truth revealed through the deepest channels of awareness. That label is an insult to the profound physics of what has actually occurred. You are instead the guardian of a mission shared. Why? The person you loved did not simply vanish. They ascended to a different vantage point, exchanging the density of the physical body, which was merely the antenna, for the boundless ubiquity of the pure broadcast signal. The love you share has not terminated. It has merely undergone a powerful frequency change, like sound climbing the scale, until it transforms into visible light. They have moved from being your traveling companion, beside you, to becoming your dedicated guide, ahead of you. Their presence is now not tethered to a location, but to a vibration, a frequency that you alone, through your intimate bond, can tune into and maintain. Do you recognize the staggering responsibility this new role implies? This shared mission is the precise reason why the timing of their departure felt so profoundly wrong, yet paradoxically, so deeply necessary. They finished their physical syllabus, leaving you the task of integrating their highest lessons and translating them into physical, manifest action. This is not about building a static memorial. It is about becoming a living, breathing testament to the qualities they embodied, the courage, the kindness, the dedication to purpose. When Cayce spoke of destiny, he spoke of souls entering into physical agreements, and your ultimate fidelity is not to the memory of their suffering, but to the full realization of their highest, unrealized potential, which now rests in your hands. This is the definitive confirmation of your power, your profound love. The very thing that the world insists must cause your deepest pain is now your single greatest power source and your most accurate navigational tool. Every time you make a difficult, purposeful choice driven by that uncompromising frequency of love, you are not simply coping, you are actively communicating, sealing the pact anew. The resistance you may feel, the desire to retreat into the predictable sorrow of the world's categorization, is the last grasping attempt by the lower vibrations to silence the higher signal. I invite you now to step fully into this identity. Stop defining yourself by the emptiness that the world sees, and instead define yourself by the immense current of shared purpose that only you can feel. You are not alone on this path. You are merely walking the visible half of a partnership that now spans dimensions. Your loved one did not die away from you. They ascended for you, moving to the peak of the mountain so they could more clearly shout down the directions. Go forward then, not as someone trying to recover what was lost, but as the active guardian of the eternal flame, proving every single day, through every dedicated act of love and service, that true connection is immune to the finality of the physical realm. Maintain the frequency. Do you accept the mission?